There is a saying among North Korean defectors: the smartest people have already escaped to South Korea. The reasonably smart ones have escaped to China, and the least smart ones are still in North Korea. But escaping North Korea is virtually impossible, and it gets harder every year. Those who succeed risked everything to get out, and they were tremendously lucky enough to make it out alive. The first thing that makes escaping so difficult is that movement within the country itself is strictly controlled. North Korea is divided into 9 provinces, and traveling between them is nearly impossible without government permission. To move between provinces, you need a travel certificate, but getting one is extremely difficult. It only permits travel for a short period of time and for a specific purpose, such as visiting for a family funeral. On top of that, it costs multiple times the average worker's monthly salary, and you still need to bribe officials just to get it processed on time. Most North Koreans cannot really afford getting a travel certificate. This means most North Koreans are stuck in whichever province they were born in. Escaping the country is only a realistic option for those living close to the borders. For those born in the inner provinces of the country, to put it bluntly, there is no way out for them. Now, let's say that you were born in the northern province near the border with China. But this time, what's making the escape so difficult is the lack of access to information. North Koreans are almost entirely cut off from the outside world. They don't know how to leave the country, what to expect beyond the border, or how to survive in a foreign country. In most countries, you could simply look it up or ask someone, but North Korea operates like a surveillance state at the community level. Neighbors monitor each other constantly. People know how many spoons and pairs of shoes you own. Any unusual behavior gets reported to the authorities immediately, and asking around about how to escape is not something you can get away with. So, for those who do want to attempt an escape, there are only 2 options that they can choose from, depending on which border they are closer to. For those living on the northern side, the most common is just taking the leap of faith and crossing the border alone. You have to avoid border patrols, navigate through a minefield, and cross the river with whatever you have on you. Getting caught means death. To improve the odds, some people bribe the border guards in advance, but not everyone can afford to do this. Also, they can't bribe the guards on the Chinese side, so if they get caught over there, they will get sent to a prison camp in North Korea. The other option is hiring a broker. These are the people who operate near the border between North Korea and China and have built connections on both sides through cross-border trade. Using a broker makes the escape significantly easier and safer, but because approaching one draws attention, they are most often hired by people who have already escaped and are trying to bring the rest of their family out. For those living near the southern border, the option is the DMZ, but this is one of the most heavily fortified borders on the planet. The troop presence here is far greater than on the northern border, which is why very few people attempt it. Those who do are mostly North Korean soldiers, and if they manage to get through the minefield and evade pursuit, South Korea pretty much accepts them immediately. There are even communication posts along the South Korean side, specifically so that defectors can contact South Korean patrols. Escaping by sea is another route, but it is an extremely dangerous one. Some people have reached South Korea by swimming or by raft, but many have also lost their lives trying. Well, there are North Korean fishermen who accidentally drift into the South Korean waters, but these are separate cases because they usually request to be returned back to North Korea, and the South Korean government simply sends them back. And I should also mention there is a small number of North Korean diplomats and overseas workers who defect by walking into a South Korean embassy in the country where they are stationed. This is rare, however, because these individuals are part of the elite, and they are sent abroad under the condition that their families remain in North Korea, so that they can be held hostage in case the diplomat ever wants to run away. Now, because of all these factors, almost 76% of North Korean defectors come from just 2 northeastern provinces, Hamgyeongbuk-do and Yanggang-do, the regions closest to the Chinese border. So, what happens after you escape? Well, 3 generations of your family will get sent to prison camps because of your betrayal. This is another main reason why many are hesitant to run away. But if you decide to make your move regardless of what happens to your family, this is what happens. As I said, if you crossed the DMZ into South Korea, the South Korean government accepts you right away, unless there is reason to believe you are a spy. From there, however, you are largely on your own. While you do receive adjustment trainings for 3 months at a government facility called Hanawon, you will eventually find yourself alone in a fully capitalist society that operates nothing like what you have ever known. You need to find a job, pay rent, manage bills, and figure out how everything works. A small number of defectors have actually returned to the North because they simply could not adjust to the life in South Korea. But most decide to stay because even though life is hard in South Korea, at least there is food on the table and nobody dies of starvation. Now, if you cross a border to China, things are considerably harder. China has close diplomatic ties with North Korea, which means Chinese authorities will send you back if they find you, and you will be sent to years of sentence at a prison camp. So you have to stay completely under the radar, without knowing the language, how the system works, and no legal status. From here, there are 2 paths you can take. The first is staying in China and finding work. Through networks of other North Korean defectors or ethnic Koreans living in China, some manage to find low-paying jobs that allow them to keep a low profile and slowly save money. But this path comes with serious risks, particularly for women. Many North Korean women who cross into China become vulnerable to human trafficking. They are often sold to men in rural areas who are looking for a wife. In best cases, they will meet loving husbands who would take good care of them. In others, they face domestic abuse with no way to seek help, since going to the authorities would mean deportation. In the worst cases, some are sold to criminal organizations and exploited under conditions that are simply too disturbing to talk about in detail. The second path is making your way to South Korea. This is typically done with the help of South Korean missionaries, human rights organizations, or brokers. Since flying directly from China to South Korea requires a passport, which defectors don't have, the only option is to travel by land to a third country. Mongolia and Thailand are the typical destinations, because unlike China, these countries will not forcibly send you back to North Korea. Once you arrive, the authorities will pass you over to the South Korean embassy, which will arrange your passage to Seoul. But getting there means crossing through some of the harshest terrain on Earth, like the Gobi Desert or dense rainforests in Southeast Asia, and many lose their lives in this process. Escaping through China had been the most widely used route for decades. However, recently, using this route is becoming increasingly impossible. China has become one of the most digitally surveilled countries in the world. Cash is rarely used anymore. Most transactions happen through QR codes linked to personal bank accounts, and you need a valid digitally recognizable ID to use public transport systems. This makes it extremely difficult for brokers to arrange transportation without leaving a trace. On top of that, during the COVID pandemic, the border between North Korea and China was fortified even further, effectively sealing off the river crossings that were once the most common escape route. The result is that the number of successful escapes has dropped dramatically in recent years. Almost no one is making it through the northern border anymore. A small number of people are still reaching South Korea by sea, but their numbers are few. Escaping North Korea was never easy, but today, for most people still inside the country, it is closer to impossible than it has ever been.